boy, let's make it simple. I've been here for 25 years, so this used to be a lot of sand, so a lot of things have been built since then. I think at the time when I first arrived here, we used to remove the pictures from the websites because the internet was too slow to download because it was over dial-up. Anyway, I'm a mathematician, expert in cybersecurity for 22 years as well. And I helped founded or co-founded several things. One is something called EcoX that we started almost 4 years plus ago, which built a very small team of people to meet weekly, and now we have reached probably, I don't know, 150, 200. But we meet weekly, and we have a community of somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 people. At the same time, obviously, I've helped co-founded other things and assist projects like, for example, Simba storage, which protects Bitcoins. We have an electronic bank, and we provide advisory services for projects in terms of being successful using these tokenization technologies. And I also helped co-founded something called GBO, Global Blockchain Organization, that advises enterprises as well as governments on the usage of digitization technologies such as blockchain, not just blockchain or crypto, but beyond crypto, blockchain as a technology. That's all.
Thank you, Jorge. And you won the most influential person in blockchain last year, didn't you? You did, in the UAE. I actually voted for him, so yeah, must have been, absolutely.
I think blockchain as a technology enhances how we actually digitize the banking system. So the things that traditionally were performed and could easily be falsified now have a mechanism without centralization to enable these operations. Now, of course, the technology has evolved a lot over the last 15 years. Bitcoin was the first, and we had Ethereum, which introduced elements known as smart contracts. And I think smart contracts are actually extremely important because they allow us to put rules that we use between relationships of those parties as well. I do believe that the future is here, but it's here beyond what we can comprehend. And what I mean by that, if we look at Bitcoin as one, we look at Ethereum as other, today we have what's called digital assets. And those digital assets allow us to tokenize the things that are part of our everyday life. This could actually be US dollars. By the way, the most popular currency today is called USDT, not even Bitcoin. That's the one that we use the most. Why? Because it's stable, and we can use to make payments with it, and it's always fixed to something that we already understand. Number two that I think is also important is we can tokenize things like real estate or gold or other things that we already use today in the physical world. But the big advantage of making it digital is that we can send it over the air between individuals without an intermediary almost instantaneously. Beyond that, I think the technology of smart contracts can also save a lot and allow, for example, to create technologies of decentralized finance, but without explaining them. But let's take an example in real life. Today, there's an organization which is the largest telecom operator that is actually using smart contracts to define the relationship between themselves and their suppliers. They have over 50 operations around the world. And guess how much this organization is saving by implementing this technology? $400 million per year. We talked about garages. You know many things that started in a garage? Oh, Amazon is a garage. Google is a garage.
They're a publicly listed regulated entity. The kid who is hacking at the cryptocurrency, 99% of them which went to zero is not regulated and therefore went to zero.
The beautiful thing is that I mentioned, we talked about Bitcoin, but there's Bitcoin, there is USDT, which is backed by US dollars.
And again, they have never been audited. We do not know if it's backed, and everybody is to believe that
There's
USDT
actually been
is
3
an absolute
audits.
scam.
And beyond that, there is USDC. There's actually about 10 different currencies that are backed and have been digitized, which is quite an interesting aspect, because beyond that, there's also digitization of real estate, digitization of gold. So at the end of the day, you can digitize the things that you consider to be valuable. At the end of the other point was about regulation. We are just recently regulated here in UAE today, actually, a very famous organization known as Binance. We did a 3 or 4 days ago in Bahrain. So that means there is definitely a big change in the air. And the big change that is happening in the air is that digital currencies and crypto is becoming part of traditional finance. One question that was mentioned as well was about governments. Today there is officially 2 governments that have Bitcoin in their balance sheet, El Salvador being one of the first ones. And there is another 10 that unofficially don't hold it because they don't want to say it publicly. But that really means that people are using today digital currencies as a potential edge against risks and enabling a whole new economy to actually take place. I think one thing is important, and I think without missing the entire point, is that we are actually in transition mode. And what I mean by transition, we're going from a physical world towards a more digital world. Blockchain is not about Bitcoin, it's not about USDT, it's not about even Ethereum or any of the other cryptocurrencies. A few of them will succeed, most of them will fail, but it's about digitalization. What is really digitalization? It's about replacing things that are physical with things that are with numbers. Now, why are things with numbers better? Because they move faster, they're easier to carry, and the transactions can be performed almost instantaneously in a much more transparent, visible way for everybody to examine. That's what it's all about. In the meantime, we will live in what I would call a hybrid world, that will have a mixture of those, and they will have to find a way to cooperate. How far away are we from a completely digital world, especially as it comes to payment systems, trade finance, and all the things that we use every day? Probably 5 years away or so. But in the meantime, the bridges between both worlds is what is going to get us there.